which I thought made sense at the time, but that's how I got permanently banned, if you don't mind, from the breast cancer awareness subreddit. Oh, hi,
No.
hello, and welcome to The Jib. This bi-weekly podcast is about the many and varied schemes of the many and varied US law enforcement and intelligence agencies, organizations, and committees and how they are stupid and funny. Join us on our merry journey through space and time. Hi, I'm Barry, and I might have shut down an entire line of vegetarian food in Ireland.
Do you want to expand on that, or?
It's a long story, but basically I wrote a letter which apparently was so excoriating and abusive that they may have shut down the entire line, and now they do a different line.
Okay.
I show it to you. Will I show it to you?
No, that's okay, I believe.
Okay.
Hi, everybody, I'm Seamus, and my third eye used to be blind, but then I had LASIX.
But now your chakras are open, are they?
Yeah.
Okay. LASIK on your third eye. That's funny. I like that.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Okay. I think sometimes we all need a bit of LASIK on our third eye, don't we? I thought you were going to do a penis joke, but you went for the... Okay, cool. Hold on.
Thank you.
But we're not here to talk about Seamus's penis. No. We're here.
We already did that.
We're here to talk about Iran. First of all, I should point out that we're not wearing our hats. Now, that is intentional, because we had a bit of drama last night, didn't we, Seamus?
Mm-hmm.
We had trouble making the sound work, and I just hope you can all hear me. And the sound was working so poorly that we decided to fuck it and try it again tonight. This is tonight. Congratulations and welcome to tonight.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about Iran. This is the third and final podcast about Iran, unless something very dramatic happens. Yes. The last time, and hopefully you can actually watch Operation Ajax. Our 20th episode, I think, was Operation Ajax, and you can watch that and Iran 2 from 2 weeks ago. And it's all in one unit. They're all designed. You can listen to them all in a row, and you will find out exactly what the F is happening in Iran. Among a V, obviously. The last time we left Iran in 1979 as the Islamic Republic of Iran with the Ayatollah Khomeini as the supreme leader, as per 2 free and fair referendums, or referenda, depending on your disposition, that passed with 99% approval. And we discussed how unlikely that is in the last episode and how much you can believe it and so on, if you want to check that out. We are also in the middle of we in the sense of 1979 Iran, we are also in the middle of a pretty spectacular oil crisis and a hostage situation that no one wanted, which appears to have been the result of a series of miscommunications and did not have any obvious exit strategy. And we'll talk about whatever that meant last time as well, so I'm not getting into it. The situation was a gift from Allah as far as the Ayatollah was concerned, as it was galvanizing all of Iranian society behind him after it was revealed that the US was planning another coup, as if the 2 referendums weren't enough of a mandate. This is when the Ayatollah started calling America Great Satan.
Oh.
It was the day after the students found the documents. He started calling America the Great Satan, and kind of see where he's coming from with that. And later on he would refer to Israel as Little Satan, which is just brilliant. Also, the entire Iranian government resigned 2 days after the students took over the embassy, after recommending that the hostages be released immediately. And they realized that the government of Iran, whatever was left of it, argued against the Ayatollah's position. And they realized that they wouldn't really, given that how successful the Ayatollah's position was, that they wouldn't really be tenable to keep on at it. And they were also up against a brick wall with the Ayatollah, you know. Their government recommended the hostages be released immediately, and they resigned 2 days after that didn't happen. This sluiced out the remnants of the old guard and leaving the Ayatollah free to do whatever he liked. Another, even more Ayatollah-friendly government was appointed. 6 diplomats managed to avoid being kidnapped by the Iranian students in November 1979 and hid out at the British embassy in Tehran. The CIA cobbled together a plan to rescue these diplomats by giving them Canadian passports and pretending they were part of a film crew. Unusually for a CIA operation, perhaps because it was a joint operation with the Canadian government, it was completely successful. What they called the Canadian Caper, would later be made into a movie called Argo, which won the 2012 Oscar for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. Jimmy Carter's review said 90% of the contributions to the ideas and the consummation of the plan was Canadian, and the movie gives almost full credit to the American CIA. And with that exception, the movie is very good. Well, Jimmy Carter is saying this. And with that exception, the movie is very good. But Ben Affleck's character in the film was only in Tehran a day and a half. And the main hero, in my opinion, was Ken Taylor, who was the Canadian ambassador who orchestrated the entire process. Now, that whole paragraph was a quote from Jimmy Carter. Taylor himself said, and here's another quote, "In reality, Canada was responsible for the 6 and the CIA was a junior partner. But I realized this is a movie." And that was his review of it. And the reaction of the Iranian students, whatever was left of the Iranian students, presumably now older and wiser, They also gave their reaction to the movie, and they said pretty much something similar. They said it's not exactly what happened, but they do understand it's a movie, and you got to make a movie, right?
I would also reference that John Goodman's character, which I can't remember who he played, but the real life person played a role in our first episode, hence the name of the jib. So for those that don't know, go rewatch the very first episode.
Nice. So. Yes, and it will explain why we call this thing the jib. If you don't know why we're called the jib, watch the first episode. Seamus goes into great detail explaining it. It is quite amusing. It's one of our funny episodes. Every so often we just do a funny one. And I think that doesn't have any tragedy in it, does it?
No.
Some sort of low-lying sex crimes, but no tragedy. April 1980, Jimmy Carter approved Operation Eagle Claw, a U.S. Department of Defense attempt to rescue the hostages. As Carter wrote at the time, the Iranian terrorists are making all kinds of crazy threats to kill the American hostages if they're invaded by Iraq, whom they identify as an American puppet. Oh no, how could they possibly identify Iraq as an... Never mind. Carter was under pressure. He vetoed a suggestion from National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, to a returning champion, I guess. And if you want to know more about him, please check out Operation Cyclone, our episode. To invade directly, Brzezinski wanted to invade directly, but Carter went with a more targeted Delta Force approach. Unfortunately, it completely failed. The helicopters carrying the soldiers suffered numerous problems, including one helicopter that crashed into another warplane, which blew up, killing everyone on board. Again, it was hard for the Ayatollah to interpret this as anything other than a gift from Allah, as he watched Carter's presidential campaign, much like another one of the Operation Eagle Claw helicopters, crash into the ground. The bodies of the American soldiers were returned to the United States in May. Now, the problem the Ayatollah is having, and it sounds like not much of a problem at the moment, is that everything he's doing is going great.
Right.
And this is the curse that will affect the Ayatollah for a lot of his time in Iran. And people give me shit for this, but I say the same thing about Hitler. Because Adolf Hitler's problem was he kept winning battles, which means he didn't learn anything.
Right.
He learned nothing at all about military strategy. He learned nothing at all about the things he should be doing. Everywhere he went, he won. Everywhere he went, he was successful.
Yeah, so he thought he was places where he expected to fail. So
in the Ardennes,
that was a big problem.
The Ardennes, well, any normal money would say the Ardennes operation would be a failure, and it was a total success. He just got really, really lucky. And how are you supposed to explain things to him? Sure, of course he's going to go off the fucking chain. Why wouldn't he? Anyway, the Ayatollah had a similar problem. Why wouldn't you? If you were the Ayatollah, take this as a sign from Allah. You're watching helicopters crash into the ground, trying to rescue the hostages. The bodies of these American soldiers were returned to the United States in May, okay, because they're not complete monsters, right? That same month, Ayatollah... no, there's a lot of Ayatollahs, by the way. There's not one Ayatollah. There's a bunch of them.
Right.
An Ayatollah is a guy who reaches a certain level of what the Shias would call knowledge of Islamic law, right? Once you get to a certain level, you're an Ayatollah. The same month, there's not a lot of them at the moment. I don't know. I think at this time there would have been around 20. That same month, Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr and his sister Bint al-Huda al-Sadr were executed by Saddam Hussein as part of an effort to quell Shia uprisings in Iraq. At the time in Iraq, the power structure was the Ba'athist party, and around 30% of the population were Sunni. The Ba'athist party was also Sunni. All of Saddam's power structure were Sunni, but 60% of the population was Shia. Right? So can you smell a rat there?
Yeah.
Saddam also had visions of being the area's strongman in the absence of the Shah. He thought he could just kind of take over the Shah role, right? And he wanted to secure more Persian Gulf access. This is an image I downloaded from Google the night before I wrote this, and I'm going to just full screen so I can see it. There we go. The green bit there is Saudi Arabia's seafront. The blue bit, the blue line is Kuwait. The red, tiny little red bit is all Iraq has. That's Iraq's entire seafront. And purple is Iran. And in that red gap there, it's basically unusable. So there's no port there. Right?
That makes sense.
It's shitty land. Yeah, if you zoom in, it's shit. You know what that is. Yeah, it's shitty land. So you can see why Saddam might want some more room, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because he was an oil-rich country and he needed to pump out the stuff, right? And he also wanted to secure more Persian Gulf access, as well as an oil-rich border province in Iran, which is right next to Iraq, the particular province he wanted. In July 1980, an attempted coup of various military officers failed, and all involved were arrested, with 144 of them being executed. You're going to find out later, of course, the Ayatollah is very execute-friendly. According to the president, Abdul Hassan Banisadr, this is the president of Iran now, Abdul Hassan Banisadr, the coup attempt was sponsored by Iraq and would function as a smokescreen for an Iraqi invasion. That's what they thought this coup was, a bunch of Iraqi aligned dissidents. Now, there's no evidence for it. It looks like they were just a bunch of Iranian disaffected cops. But the story the the Ayatollah was going with was that this was a smokescreen for an Iraqi invasion,
Okay.
right? Unfortunately, again, the Ayatollah smashed it, really, because in September 1980, Iraq invaded Iran.
Mm.
So what are you supposed to do? He's basically Allah's telling him, you're doing everything the right way, mate. You keep going, Ayatollah. You're
Yep.
doing great, right? At this time, the US did not support Iran as Iran was aligned with the USSR and opposed Israel.
Right.
The US decided to stay theoretically neutral, with the eventual hope that they might be able to put more pressure on Iran to release the hostages by staying neutral, right? Unfortunately, this made things worse. The Iraqis had expected a quick victory because, now remember now, from what I've told you about Iran last time and even just now, Iran's political system is in total chaos. The army has been sluiced out of all the Shah guys who are kind of running the thing, so the whole thing is in chaos, right? The Iraqis expected a quick victory due to what they regard as total confusion in the Iranian military and leadership, fair enough. However, the Iranians did better than expected, and the territorial gains made by Iraq ground to a halt by the end of 1980. In January 1981, Reagan was sworn in as president. During his inaugural address, Iran released all the hostages.
Oh.
Now,
Yeah.
no one's yeah, right? That's a fucking boss move, right?
Well, is it though?
Well, no one's entirely sure why.
Mm-hmm.
But one theory says that Reagan specifically arranged for the hostages to not be released as long as Carter was president in exchange for support against Iraq.
What I had read before was it was Bush, as in his VP.
Yeah.
He had back channels to make that happen, even though literally Carter was staying up that night before the inauguration on the phone trying to get them to release hostages. Yeah, this is very much like what Kissinger did with Vietnam surrendering and all that shit. Yeah,
but that's different. The thing Kissinger did is documented, and we know that actually happened.
Right. Okay. This is speculated, but
this is
I think there's still. I think there's a lot to it. I'm not saying it's not. Yeah. We're not just throwing it out there. So
I say here Reagan specifically arranged blah blah blah. Obviously, I mean Bush. I'm just saying Reagan to stand in for the right. Reagan would often be used by me to stand in for his administration, right? I don't mean,
of course.
He knew nothing. He didn't know what was going on.
No.
That's a theory.
Applesauce day one.
Yeah, applesauce day one. The theory makes sense. Given the evidence we have, that theory makes sense. But I don't know if it's true. I know that bloody Vietnam thing is cynical bastards were. Yeah. Anyway, a more likely explanation, we have another theory, a more likely explanation is that it happened because of long and hard negotiations by Carter's team led by Warren Christopher. Warren Christopher spent a long time meeting with Iranian representatives in Algeria who eventually signed the Algiers Accords on the January 19, which was the day before the inauguration, which would have made it a complete coincidence. They would have just gotten the Algiers Accords agreement, like they would have released the hostages as soon as they got the agreement in their hands, which would have made it January 20 around dinner time, and it could have been just a coincidence, you know. As part of this hostage release deal, the US agreed to, and this is a quote, restore the financial position of Iran insofar as possible to that which existed prior to November 14, 1979. The United States pledged, because they had frozen the accounts, right?
Right.
The United States pledges that it is, and from now on will be, the policy of the United States not to intervene, directly or indirectly, politically or militarily, in Iran's internal affairs. Now,
isn't that very similar language to what Obama had him agree to? And he released their funds that had been frozen. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, probably foreshadowing, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But that sentence, you have a lot of leeway to interfere in their internal affairs with that sentence.
Mm-hmm.
As ever, we cannot discount the possibility that the Iranians chose that exact moment to release the hostages just because they thought it might be funny. I mean, the Iranian, if you've seen their social media game recently, they have a good sense of humor.
Oh, so they're fucking bawling. I mean, they're just fucking kicking it out of the park, man.
They might have thought it was funny just to do it in the middle of his... Yeah. The news channels who were all broadcasting the inauguration address got the news of the hostages being released, and they didn't broadcast it until after the address was finished. So it's possible the Iranians were hoping to break into the middle to cut all the news cuts in half to interrupt the inaugural address.
Which honestly they should have, because that's more fucking important than the pomp and circumstance. You know what I mean? Come on.
So there's a bunch of different theories. One is that Bush had back channels and he arranged it like that to make sure Reagan went through. The other one is that Carter's team worked so hard and they got the results they wanted, and it just happened to be on January 19th they signed it. And the third one is that the Iranians have a sense of humor.
Yeah. All good.
Maybe a little
all reasonable. Yeah.
On the 10th of June, and you know when I start talking about dates instead of years, we're talking about a
It's not
telescope
good.
timescale, right? No, it's never good. On the 10th of June 1981, the Ayatollah impeached the president of Iran, Abdul Hassan Banisadr. You'll remember him from before when he disagreed
Yeah.
with the Ayatollah. After
Right.
comments he made suggesting another referendum might be necessary in view of the fairly dramatic changes happening in Iran under the new regime. He was offered the chance to apologize, but he refused. So the Ayatollah fired him. Now again, the president of Iran is elected, the prime minister of Iran is elected, but the guy in charge of the country is the Ayatollah.
Okay. Right.
The guy in charge
Yep.
remains the Ayatollah because he is appointed by God, according to Shia beliefs. The Sunnis don't think anything like that, but the Shias think this guy's appointed by God and he's in charge, right? On the 14th of June, 4 days later, in 1981, the Ayatollah Khomeini ordered that all higher education be purged of Western or liberal influences as part of a broader cultural revolution to remove all Western and liberal influences from all aspects of public life, right? In other words, the Islamification of everything. Right? On the 20th of June, the following week, the MEK organized, do you know what the MEK are? Did I mention that? They're an
No.
Shia Islamic group inside Iran who disagree with the Ayatollah but are otherwise on the same page with them on pretty
Okay.
much everything. They're Shia
Okay.
Islamic guys, but they're fighting a fairly vicious battle against the Ayatollah because they think he's doing things all wrong. So naturally, he called them terrorists. And I guess they are, given your ordinary definition of
Sure.
terrorists.
Sure.
The MEK organized a series of protests against the Ayatollah about the sacking of the president and also the changes to the university system. On the 27th of June, the following week, a bomb went off at Abu Zar Mosque in Tehran, where the Ayatollah Khomeini had recently appointed Ali Khamenei as the Khatib, or the guy in charge of the services on a Friday, which, as far as I'm concerned, means the same thing as imam. But when you look it up, Khatib is like, I guess, a super imam. Guys, when I tell you this guy's name is Khamenei, just trust me, because we are not to confuse Khomeini and Khamenei. This
Sure.
is Ali Khamenei, the Khatib of the Abu Zar Mosque. We'll see him a lot of times, don't worry. You'll notice his hand is in a cast. A bomb went off at his mosque, blowing him up, and it destroyed his hand. Khamenei, I guess I'll just hit the AE hard at the end of that so you can tell it's him, right? His right arm will be permanently paralyzed as a result of the attack. So any of the pictures you see of Khamenei after that, his arm is paralyzed, right? On the 28th of June, the following day, 1981, a bomb went off at party headquarters in Tehran, killing 74 officials, if we can just think about that for a moment, including the
Mm-hmm.
Ayatollah's second in command, the Ayatollah Beheshti. The Iranian government blamed Iraqi agents, but suspicions linger that it may have been more local MEK terrorists, right? Now,
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's Iraqi agents or not. They were in the middle of a war against Iraq, so it certainly could have been. But the MEK hated the Ayatollah even more than the Iraqis did, so who knows, right? The point is, these are dark times in Iran. The Ayatollah responded with a wave of revenge attacks, often called the Reign of Terror. That's not good, is it?
No.
The opportunity was taken to rid Iran of all political opponents or any source of support or political opposition, which naturally included MEK members, but also, and this list is going to be familiar if you've seen our Cambodia episode, but also intellectuals, scientists, artists, socialists, social democrats, nationalists, liberals, monarchists in this case meaning supporters of the Shah, and various members of ethnic minorities and minority religions, most notably the Baha'i faith, who were more or less excluded from Iranian citizenship during this time. They were told that they would not qualify for any public services. Records indicate that 3,500 victims were executed between the 21st of June 1981 and the 21st of March 1982 in 85 cities. Now that's bad
Okay.
enough, right?
Yeah.
That's a human
Yeah.
rights.
Oh,
Absolute.
definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. This included high school students and other minors. Defending the execution of basically who were some little girls, right? One of the
Yeah.
judges said, by the Islamic canon, a 9-year-old girl is mature. So there's no difference for us between a 9-year-old girl and a 40-year-old man. Right? Now this, I should point out, this is not the general understanding in Islam, right? What they would say is like a girl who is post-monarchical is mature. And post-monarchical would also be kind of regarded as, in a way, mature in our societies as well, like in a certain way, right? But
Yeah.
the imams, or not the imams, but the muftis now would be very careful about how they word these things, you know? But back then, they didn't give a fuck, man. They shoot her in the head because, you know, whatever happened in the hadiths or whatever. In August 1981, a bomb at the Prime Minister's office killed the Prime Minister, the President, the Iranian Chief of Police, and some other top Iranian government officials. See, no one does regime change in Iran better than the Iranians. They just kill them all, right? This time, the Ayatollah directly blamed the MEK. The Ayatollah's forces were still in the middle of a reign in terror, and this did nothing to calm it down. Behzad Nabavi, Minister of Executive Affairs, said, "We do not like killing these young people, but what can we do? We cannot refrain from executing a person who murders people." Now, if you read the Quran, there is justification. You can dig up a justification for that because the Quran says it's okay to kill traitors.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, any religion you can use to justify. I mean,
Yeah, but any country,
So.
like until very recently, treason was punishable by death in lots of
Sure.
Western countries as well. Yeah. So this isn't like completely off the chain. It's just a human rights crime. In September 1981, the Ayatollah installed another government with his old friend Ali Khamenei, Ayatollah in training, as its president on the promise to eliminate deviation, liberalism, and American influence leftists. Right? Now, try American influence leftists. If we can just kind of wrap our heads around that idea, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really exist.
I can promise you, any of the American people in Iran are not leftists, right?
No.
By the end of 1981, the Iranians were in a position to counterattack and invaded Iraq. No one was expecting this, but Khamenei was very much in favor of attacking Iraq. In 1982, the Iranian forces went to the front. Now, get a mental picture of this. It's a bit like Mad Max Fury Road, right?
Okay.
In 1982, the Iranian forces went to the front by taking the bus or train, or by being driven there by their friends in private cars. Now, this was so unusual that Iraqi forces at first failed to notice that an invasion was happening, perhaps confusing it for a particularly aggressive form of tourism.
Sure.
But it worked. Iran was doing very well, and now Iran was kind of doing really well, taking over bits of Iraq. No one saw this coming. Everyone had a problem now. Everybody had a problem. Iraq's problem was obvious. They were losing a war, they were running out of money, and their defense capacity was shit. Right? Their army just folded when the Iranians started getting antsy. Iran had a problem because they were also running out of money for this war. They kept winning, and the almost unavoidable resulting militarization of the country, coupled with the almost unanimous support for the Islamic regime, except for the MEK, the war caused, made it almost impossible to off-ramp without dramatically hurting their own interests. Right? Everything was going so great for them. If they said, "Oh, let's stop this winning strategy," it doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
When Saddam offered a peace deal in 1982, the Prime Minister and President of Iran wanted to take the deal. But the Ayatollah refused, saying he would never stop until the government in Iraq was replaced with a Shia Islamic government. Right? He was presumably hoping the Shia majority in Iraq would help in some way, the 60% of Iraq that was Shia, right? Everybody had a problem. The Americans had a problem now because they only wanted to stay neutral as long as there was a stalemate. A constant stalemate was their ideal situation in this place. Keep pumping money into it and just watch it, nothing happen. That's what they wanted, right? If Iran was going to overrun Iraq, as seemed likely, a number of nightmare scenarios presented themselves to the US State Department, mostly involving oil monopolies. But at least one theorized that, this is straight from the State Department, the Iranians invade Iraq, they defeat Iraq, and then head straight for Israel, which is distracted and debilitated by its ongoing adventure in Lebanon, which was happening at exactly the same time. We'll talk about the Lebanon thing in another episode. Don't get me started. All you need to know now is Israel is not able to handle an Iranian invasion right now because of the Lebanon mess. Yeah. And the Americans also didn't want Iraq to overrun Iran for similar reasons. They didn't want the oil monopoly problem. Also, it was clear that Saddam was a very ambitious leader and hungered to expand Iraq, which turned out to be an even bigger problem later on.
He's a real go-getter.
Yeah, he's got ambition, man. The American
seems like a nice guy.
Saddam.
Yeah, the right kind of dictator. Oh, no doubt.
Saddam started off as a dickhead. He started off as a prick. Some of them don't. Some of them started, like the Ayatollah, in fairness to him, started off kind of okay and he went weird. But Saddam started off not like that.
He's fucking evil. He's fucking evil, motherfucker.
It's looking that way, yeah. The American position was perhaps best summarized by Henry Kissinger.
Oh, God. Why, Barry? Why? Why?
You're going to like this. Her returning champion, your very best friend. Henry Kissinger, who said of this war, he said, "It's a pity both sides can't lose." That's the American position.
Okay.
No, I get it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, all right. Okay, go off king. I get it.
Everyone had a problem. Iran had a problem. Iraq had a problem. The Americans had a problem. Israel had a problem. The Gulf states had a problem because they were all run by kings, right? In the Gulf states, kings over there in the Gulf states are called emirs, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the Ayatollah made it very clear that he regarded monarchy as an illegitimate form of government under Islam. And if he took over Iraq, there may be no stopping him. He'd just sluice out the whole region and put Shia guys in charge, right? So from mid-1982, Saudi Arabia funded Iraq to the tune of $1 billion a month, if we just get our head around that number.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Not because they loved the Iraqis, but because they saw their they saw the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
The US hastily removed Iraq, by the way, from its list of terrorist states so it could legally sell them weapons. In June 1982, Reagan said that the US would do whatever was necessary to prevent Iraq from losing. Now you'll notice there's nothing about Iran winning,
Yeah.
right? Really, they're all walking a really dangerous tightrope. It seemed that like the entire Western world got in on this massive profit-making machine. You cannot conceive how much money was being made on this Iran-Iraq war, but it was a lot. For instance, France sold Iraq millions of dollars worth of weapons, but the list just goes on and on. Even Ireland, my country, which was supposed to be neutral, and we're supposed to be kind of a nice country, who doesn't go around killing people, right? Even Ireland got a slice of the Iraq dream when we sent tons of beef to feed Iraq's army in deals arranged by a guy called Larry Goodman, who would later be the focus of the beef tribunal, a thing that happened in Ireland, which involved allegations of fraud, malpractice, and corruption in the Irish beef industry, involving the Irish Prime Minister at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the only reason I'm saying that is because I'm from Ireland and I remember it.
Yeah.
Many countries, including the United States, France, the Netherlands, Egypt, Singapore, if you can call that a country, India, Austria, Österreich, West Germany, sold Iraq dual-use pesticides and poisons that would be used to create chemical weapons, right? By late 1983, by late 1983, the CIA sent a report to the State Department that Iraq was using chemical weapons on Iranians almost daily, is the quote. The US did nothing with this information. They didn't even say anything after the Iranians went public about their own investigation into these breaches of international law at the UN, and that would have been the time to mention it. In fact,
but they used this against them years later.
Yes.
It's justification to go and to invade them.
Yeah, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Yeah, so they didn't do anything when they heard about the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction, we call them, right? Yeah. In fact, Reagan snapped into action and issued an arms embargo against Iran.
Of course.
To make sure no American weapons would end up in Iran, including any sourced from third parties. This was called Operation Staunch. If you've seen our Iran-Contra episode, you will know that throughout Operation Staunch, the US government was itself selling arms to Iran. So you'll find out all about that on our episode Iran-Contra, which also involves Iran just tangentially, but it's really about Nicaragua. So if you want to know about Operation Staunch, which is, and again, one of the most cynical things they could possibly have done, and it was successful in the sense that other countries stopped selling American weapons to Iran, while the Americans were selling weapons to Iran secretly, clandestinely, and against their own laws. Do you recognize any of those people?
Rumsfeld and Hussein. I don't know who the guy in the middle is, though.
Neither do I, but you got all the ones that I give a shit about.
Fair.
On the 24th of March 1984, the UN reported that that Iraq was using chemical weapons. Now the UN is reporting it, right? Mm-hmm. The next year, including mustard gas and chemical nerve agents against Iranian troops.
There it is.
Coincidentally, this was the same day as Donald Rumsfeld's second visit to Baghdad to coordinate US support for Iraq. And that's a photo of that happening on the 24th of March 1984. In an affidavit signed in 1995, National Security Council advisor Howard Teicher said that he was at many of the CIA meetings involved in the secret operation. And this is a quote, a big long-ass quote from Howard Teicher in an affidavit he signed in 1995. The United States actively supported the Iraqi war effort by supplying the Iraqis with billions of dollars of credits, by providing US military intelligence and advice to the Iraqis, and by closely monitoring third country arms sales to Iraq to make sure that Iraq had the military weaponry required. The United States also provided strategic operational advice to the Iraqis to better use their assets in combat. The CIA knew of, approved of, and assisted in the sale of non-US origin military weapons, munitions, and vehicles to Iraq. The reason they're non-US is because of Operation Staunch, and it would be illegal to do so, right? Now, I know they did it themselves, but that was a separate operation that even like high-ups in the government didn't know about Iran-Contra before it blew. In 1987, Reagan, certainly no one in Congress knew about it. In 1987, Reagan imposed an embargo on Iranian goods and services, including their oil, which was lifted at the end of the war. An investigation by the House Banking Committee determined that around 30% of dual-use export licenses issued between 1985 and 1990 went either directly to the Iraqi armed forces, to Iraqi end users engaged in weapons production, or to Iraqi enterprises suspected of diverting technology. What do you think diverting means? They were
Diverting us and
diverting
sending it
technology.
elsewhere.
No, they were diverting technology to making weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, okay.
That's what they mean by but because it's an American report, you have to kind of read between the lines, by diverting technology, full stop. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
but when you divert something, you divert it to something, right?
Yeah.
Um, the support given to Iraq also included intelligence sharing to the point where the US built their own intelligence facility in Baghdad just to process military intelligence for their war against Iran. There then proceeded a stalemate, which was possibly the ideal outcome from the perspective of everybody involved, except the regular folks who were living in Iraq and Iran, right? While the Shia revolution the Ayatollah hoped for never happened in Iraq, the Kurds in northern Iraq did enter the war on Iran's side. In March of 1988, Iraq killed around 4,000 Kurds with chemical weapons. The BBC reported, yeah, Jesus is correct. The BBC reported that a lethal cocktail of mustard gas and the nerve agents Tauben, Sarin, and VX were used. This is called the Halabja massacre, and it's the largest chemical weapons attack directed against civilians in human history. I'm going to give you a witness account, and again, this is kind of long asked, but we're just going to listen to the guy, right? One witness said, "It started with a loud, strange noise that sounded like bombs exploding, and a man came running into our house shouting, 'Gas, gas!' We hurried into our car and closed the windows. I think the car was rolling over the bodies of innocent people. I saw people lying on the ground, vomiting a green-coloured liquid, while others became hysterical and began laughing loudly before falling motionless onto the ground." Now, this is a thing that a lot of witnesses reported. Before people died, they would start laughing hysterically at whatever chemical reaction was happening in the brain, right? Later, I smelled an aroma that reminded me of apples, another thing that a lot of people reported smelled like apples. And I lost consciousness. When I woke, there were hundreds of bodies scattered around me. After that, I took shelter again in a nearby basement, and the area was engulfed by an ugly smell. It was similar to rotting garbage, but then it changed to a sweet smell similar again to that of apples. Then I smelled something that was like eggs. Eggs means sulfur, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's one witness account. That sounds delightful, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Despite the fact that Iraq had used chemical weapons on Kurds on at least 20 previous occasions, this was special. The Western press reported on it. But the CIA, in a completely insane move, blamed Iran for the attack.
Of course.
The British government also decided not to make a big deal about it. Saddam fairly reasonably took this as a sign from the international community that he was free to use chemical weapons. Why wouldn't he? Yeah. And undertook even more chemical weapons attacks against Kurds, which was called the An-Anfal campaign. And he called it the An-Anfal campaign after the chapter in the Quran called Al-Anfal, which means the spoils of war. And this particular chapter concerns the aftermath of the Battle of Badr in AD 624, and is I have to say, the Quran is silent on both the issue of Kurds and chemical weapons. So how you would regard that as, I don't know. Up to 100,000 Kurds were killed in what Human Rights Watch and other organizations called genocide, because you could argue they were targeted because of their ethnicity. Right. By late summer 1988, Al-Anfal, right, the spoils of war from the Quran, had achieved its... By the way, Saddam Hussein didn't give a fuck about the Quran. Can we just say that, right?
Correct.
Al-Anfal had achieved its objectives, and the entire male population of Iraqi Kurdistan was either dead or fled to Iran. The entire male population of Iraqi Kurdistan was either dead or fled to Iran. In July 1988, the US Navy warship USS Van Zandt, which had wandered into Iranian waters, shot down Iran Air Flight 655, a passenger plane, killing 290 people. Iran accused the United States of war crimes, which it obviously unambiguously is. The United States claimed that it happened during a war, and the crew of the Van Zandt acted appropriately given the information they had at the time. Right? Now, the Ayatollah started panicking. He secretly issued a fatwa that ended, "It is decreed that those who are in prison throughout the country and remain steadfast in their support for the munafiqeen," meaning the hypocrites, or traitors, I guess, are waging war on God and are condemned to execution. In other words, all political prisoners in Iran were to be executed. Thousands of people were killed, mostly MEK members whose organization was accused of working with the Iraqis and within Iran. Now, we have to talk about fatwas briefly, and I've mentioned this before. Now, I mentioned one difference between Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, right? Sunnis are they all kind of get together, they're muftis, they're legal experts, get together, and they decide what's going to happen. In Shia Islam, the Ayatollahs decide what's going to happen, right? Also, there's this thing called a fatwa. And in Sunni Islam, a fatwa is a judgment of an Islamic expert, right? A mufti, but you don't have to do anything about it. You can just say, well, thank you for your judgment, I'll ignore it, right? Mm-hmm. In Shia Islam, if an Ayatollah gives you a fatwa, it's like an order from somebody who's been blessed by God. In other words, like when the Catholic Church, when the Pope says something ex cathedra, it's basically an order from God. But in the Protestant Church, all the bishops just get together and decide what their policy is. It's that kind of difference, right? So when the Ayatollah issued a fatwa, there's really not a lot anybody could do about it, and they had to kind of just kill all the prisoners. On the 8th of August 1988, Iran, whereas if the Sunnis said issued a fatwa, they could just ignore it, right?
Yeah.
On the 8th of August 1988, Iran accepted a ceasefire deal with Iraq, finally accepting United Nations Security Council Resolution 598, which had been passed the year before, and at the time was described by the Ayatollah as more deadly than drinking from a poisoned chalice. Now, however, he could see that the Western powers were just going to keep supplying and supporting Iraq infinitely, and his army was getting tired. The economy and infrastructure of Iran, including their nuclear power plants, were destroyed. Also, the generally muted international response to what the Iranians saw as an atrocity, the shooting down of a passenger plane the previous month, led the Ayatollah to suspect that the Americans were gearing up for a more direct invasion, bypassing the Iraq proxy entirely. And I don't know if he was right, but he might not have been entirely wrong about that, because nobody gave a shit. Like, he was surprised that nobody gave a shit they blew 300 Iranian civilians out of the sky.
Yeah.
In 1989, Ayatollah Khomeini died. This is Ali Khamenei and the Ayatollah Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini is on the right, obviously the older one, and this Ali Khamenei in happier times, right? In 1985, this is 1989, the Ayatollah Khomeini died. In 1985, he had named the Ayatollah Hussein Ali Montazeri as his successor, but after the execution of the political prisoners, Montazeri condemned the action as far worse than those of the Shah and Savak.
Oh my.
Now let's just have a little think about that. An Ayatollah told this Ayatollah that what he did was worse than what the Shah and Savak were doing, right? And the Shah and Savak were so awful that that's what made the Ayatollah look like a goodie in the first place. So that's a very loaded statement. So after saying that, instead of giving that fucker a medal, the Ayatollah Khomeini fired him. He was fired from his second-in-command position, and Khomeini chose Ali Khamenei instead, even though he was not a grand Ayatollah at all and exuded an almost minus charisma. Of course, that's back when being an Ayatollah meant something. Anyone can be an Ayatollah these days. Well, that's true. I mean, nowadays, if you finish the course in Ayatollah studies, you can be an Ayatollah, so there's hundreds of them in Iran. But back then, there was only about 20. Khamenei was president of Iran at the time of his ascension to supreme leader, so the position of president became open and went to Ali Akbar Rafsanjani. You probably remember that guy. Do you remember the name Rafsanjani? It was all over the news all the time. Well, he was the president of Iran. Rafsanjani was what Iran had instead of a reformer. Right? Now, none of them can be very reformy because the Ayatollah is, of course, in ultimate control. But some of them are a little bit, more open than others. And the Ayatollah, like, I guess in fairness to him, he won't actually do anything unless he feels something anti-Islamic is happening. Rafsanjani was what Iran had instead of a reformer and tried to create relationships internationally, which was what they should have been doing all along, of course, instead of shutting him down, right? After him, Mohammad Khatami served as president from 1997 to 2005. He was also a reformer, and he had the delightful problem of dealing with the younger Iranians who had no memory of the Shah and knew only repressive Islamic laws. They had no context for it. However, he was credited with pushing for liberalization and establishing a dialogue between nations, which he called a dialogue between nations, something he intentionally aimed at Samuel Huntington, whose essay, The Clash of Civilizations, was popular among Western conservatives. Do you remember that essay, The Clash of Civilizations? He was basically saying that the Muslims are going to come over to Europe and declare war on our lovely American values and so on. That's where all that shit started with Samuel Huntington. And that's why we, like you'll see, he started this ridiculous thing about Muslims. Anyway, in general, Ayatollah Khamenei kept a relatively low international profile throughout his supreme leadership, right? Which was intelligent. His first real test of international statesmanship was when Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990. Although the Americans mysteriously released millions of dollars of loans from the World Bank to Iran the night before the invasion, Iran stayed neutral. They were happy enough to see their old enemy's army get destroyed, while also knowing full well that there's no meaningful way the Americans could win a war against Iraq without a full-scale invasion and a subsequent occupation. This might actually be a war where everyone loses. Iraq lost on paper in 1991, but the Iranians got to sit back and watch the absolute shit show the Americans made of it for the next 20 years. Well, I guess 13 years. In 1991, Egypt wrote a letter to the UN asking the permanent members of the UN Security Council and also Israel, Iran and the Arab states to formally endorse a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. Now, wouldn't that have solved a lot of problems?
Yeah.
What a good idea from Egypt. In 1992, in a speech to the Knesset, a young and up-and-coming Likud MK called Benjamin Netanyahu said Iran could produce a nuclear bomb within 3 to 5 years. Oh no, this guy's got a lot of promise. This Netanyahu guy, I think he's got a good future ahead of him.
I believe the term is they are weeks away. Well, as it has been said for the past 3,000 years, it has so come to be.
Yeah. Well, the joke is that the period of time gets smaller and smaller. Yeah. But here he said within 3 to 5 years was his quote this time. Okay. In 1993, a Foreign Office memo of the UK Foreign Office said that the UK has never formally responded to the above letter, meaning the Egypt letter, and neither, to our knowledge, have the other Permanent Security Council members. The chief problem in any case is one of the regional suspicions, including Israel's failure to sign the NPT. So basically, the problem
they never would.
No, because they refused. No, they couldn't. Yeah. They couldn't sign it because, well, as I said in our Mordecai Vanunu episode, if you want to check it out, I explained that the reason they can't is because if they admit they have nuclear weapons, the US will be cut off from giving them military aid, and they get $1 billion, $3 billion of military aid every year. So they will never confirm that they have nuclear weapons. They will never sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which means this fantastic idea Egypt had could never take off, but it also means you're putting Iran on the back foot as well. In 1995, in his book Fighting Terrorism, Netanyahu repeated his claim that Iran could make a nuclear bomb in 3 to 5 years. Soon afterwards, Clinton signed Executive Order 12959, which banned all trade with Iran, including investments in Iran, and a special mention for any US citizen who helps someone else trade with Iran. In the late 1990s, Iran began a secret nuclear weapons research program with help from Russia, China, and Pakistan. In 2000, Clinton authorized the CIA to go ahead with Operation Merlin, a plan to send deliberately incorrect nuclear weapons plans to Iran. They used an ex-Russian nuclear scientist as an intermediary, but apparently they didn't tell this guy the whole story because he noticed the mistakes in the design and told the Iranian scientist about it. Yeah. This made the mission a failure. Total, obviously, complete failure. Yeah. After the 9/11 attacks in 2001, Khatami expressed sympathy with the Americans. Now, this is what we call a turning point, right? This would have been a diplomatic crowbar in to get the Iranians to calm the fuck down, right? Because everyone's been nice to each other after 9/11. The Americans have what you call diplomatic capital. They could have spent it any way they wanted, and they spent it blowing up Afghanistan for 20 years. Anyway. Yep. Unfortunately, yet another opportunity for dialogue was squandered when Bush decided to include Iran in his axis of evil. Now, he didn't have to do that. No. Iran responded with its largely performative axis of resistance, which was, let's face it, performative, right? Axis of resistance, comprising itself Ba'athist Syria, which we spoke about before, Hezbollah, and Hamas, which was more about opposition. This whole axis, in other words, was more about opposition to Israel than opposition to the United States. But the consistent theme of Iranian analysis since 1963 had been that they were effectively the same thing. And can you blame them? And especially given that the warplanes hitting Tehran last week were both Israeli and US, right? You can kind of see why they think they're the same thing. Oh, yeah. In 2002, during US congressional testimony, Netanyahu, our old friend, claimed that Iran was nearing development of a nuclear weapon and that it was an urgent matter. Urgent. That year, dissident Iranians revealed the existence of 2 secret nuclear facilities in Iran, a uranium enrichment plant and a heavy water plant. The Iranians claimed they were just for energy production and didn't want anyone knowing about it in case those plants were bombed. The Iraqis had bombed nuclear energy plants during the Iran-Iraq War, and suspicions lingered. So they had a precedent for not telling people what these nuclear plants were doing. The Iranians countered that the Ayatollah had issued a fatwa against any weapons of mass destruction during the Iran-Iraq War, and it has indeed been confirmed that despite most provocation, the Iranians never deployed any weapons of mass destruction against Iraq. The Minister of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, you may know them as, during the war, a guy called Mohsen Rafiq-Doust, claimed that the Ayatollah Khomeini told me that instead of producing chemical or biological weapons, we should produce defensive protection for our troops like gas masks and atropine. Rafiq-Doust claims he supervised a chemical weapons program anyway, right, against the wishes of the Ayatollah. He went ahead and did it anyway because he's the head of the IRGC and that's his job. And when he brought the results of the successful chemical weapons program to the Ayatollah after Iraq started bombing civilians with chemical weapons in urban areas, the Ayatollah again refused, saying, "It doesn't matter whether it's on the battlefield or in the cities, we are against this. It is haram to produce such weapons. You are only allowed to produce protection." Right? Haram. Haram, mate. Haram. right? The chemical weapons program was immediately shut down. And that was the last anybody heard of the Iranian chemical weapons program, when the Ayatollah basically shouted this guy to fuck off.
Yeah.
In 1992, 4 years after the war finished, a nuclear weapons program was again suggested to the Ayatollah, who answered very clearly, "Stop talking about nuclear weapons."
Oh,
Yeah. Now remember, this is important. This is very important. I say this every one of my scripts. I say this. Do not think the Ayatollah is a good guy.
sure.
Do not think that the Americans are the bad guys when I tell you these things. This is not about good guys or bad guys. This is about how things happened and how things flew out, right? In this particular paragraph, the Ayatollah is a beacon of morality, taking the moral option because he is taking direct instructions from the Quran. And he is taking the morally good option. He's not a morally good person at all, because in the previous paragraph he was executing minor girls because the Quran led him to believe that was okay, right? So don't think he's a good guy. He's just coming off great in this paragraph. And the Americans, of course, they're not like bad guys. They just have all the power in the world, and they're executing it to maximize their resources. That's really what's happening with the Americans in every single one of my podcasts, right? I mean, seeing them as the bad guys, sure, but that's not helping. That's not helping you understand.
Yeah, I know.
If you see them as morally bad, like, that's not the problem. The problem is they're deploying their resources, you know. So I say this every time: the Ayatollah is not the good guy. Okay, he's just fighting at the moment against people who are worse than him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, in 2003, the Ayatollah Khamenei made the informal public policy. Made the informal policy public by issuing a clear fatwa, a written fatwa, against nuclear weapons. Unlike in Sunni Islam, under Shia Islam, the fatwa overrides all other political or military concerns without exception. Right? In 2005, this fatwa was written down in a report submitted to the IAEA, who we discussed a lot during our Iran episode, that the production, stockpiling, and use of nuclear weapons were forbidden under Islam. Now, again, this is not... When he says Islam, he means Shia under the Ayatollah. He doesn't mean Sunni Islam, right? Yeah. So the stockpiling and use of nuclear weapons were forbidden under Islam. And whatever else you say about the Ayatollah, you have to say he is taking orders from the Quran. In 2005, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was elected president. There he is now, on the left. You remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you remember that head?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Unlike the previous two presidents, Ahmadinejad was a hardline conservative loyal to the Ayatollah Khamenei. He was openly hostile to Israel and the US and the UK and Saudi Arabia and lots of other places. He was openly hostile. Whereas the previous two guys would have been more sort of a conciliatory and tried to be friends with people. This guy said that the UN was, quote, one-sided, stacked against the world of Islam, end quote, and argued that the Muslim world should be given a veto on the Security Council. And that's not a bad idea, given that there's a billion of them. And you want to kind of, sometimes they feel like they're acting as a unit, they're called the Ummah. In 2009, Ahmadinejad won another election against Mir Hossein Mousavi, who's the other gentleman there on the other side of the Iranian flag, in a vote many Iranians regarded as suspicious. I also regard it as suspicious, but I have no proof that the vote was rigged, but I regard it as suspicious for the same reason many Iranians regard it as suspicious. It's technical reasons, so I'm not going into it, but just it was suspicious. This dissatisfaction led to the Green Movement, which you will probably remember, a series of protests by Iranians led by Mousavi, who believed he was robbed, which he kind of was, I guess, and supported by the Ayatollah Montazeri, mentioned above as fired by the Ayatollah Khomeini as his next in line. So Montazeri is now supporting Mousavi, right? Ayatollah on Ayatollah violence. Images of women defiantly removing their hijabs were shared around the world, leading many Western leading many Western media outlets to incorrectly conclude that the people of Iran were sick of Islam. Now, here's something I've mentioned before as well. Whenever this kind of thing happens, Iranians have a revolution. The women get antsy and they start taking their hijabs off, and it always gets reported as, "Oh, look, they're sick of Islam," right? No, they're not. All of these women are Muslims. They're not frustrated atheists, right? They're all Muslims who want to live in a Muslim country. They want to do Islamic things. They just don't want to be told what to do by the Ayatollah. And there's lots of Muslim countries who are like that. They like all the Sunni countries would basically be like that. The Islam is is not like that. If they're being told what to do, it's because it's been run by a dictator. Whereas this guy is trying to tell them, "Oh, you're Shia Islam, you have to do this," right? That's terrible. And the women sometimes don't like that. That's what they're protesting against their government. It's like saying if the Americans take to the streets to protest against the government that they're trying to get rid of Christianity. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's
Right.
the kind of thing I want you to think about when you see these things. In 2009, in meetings with U.S. officials, the same year, in other words, that these protests happened, Netanyahu claimed Iran was 1 to 2 years away from a nuclear weapon. You see,
This guy.
his window is getting narrowing.
Yeah.
In 2010. Bush authorized the CIA to go ahead with Operation Olympic Games. The US and Israel worked together on making a computer virus called Stuxnet, which infected the computers in the Iranian nuclear facilities and did substantial damage. That was a successful operation as well. Now, of course, they just got rid of the virus over time and went back to doing whatever. In 2011, because of the fatwa thing, we, I think, can fairly reliably say that the Iranians are not working on a nuclear weapons program.
Yeah.
Right? Just because of the fatwa on its own. That's just not how they operate. They don't give false fatwas. Somebody thought that somebody suggested that the Ayatollah was operating under taqiyya, meaning the Islamic reservation where you're allowed to tell lies and still be Islamic. But the taqiyya is only ever used when you're under the gun. And more specifically, like under an actual gun. And more specifically where they ask you, are you a Muslim? And if you say yes, they will shoot you. You can say no.
Right.
That's taqiyya, really. Anyway. It'd be a very twisty-turny way for the Ayatollah to try and justify that. In 2011, now we're getting closer to the times we remember, everybody. You know how old the people in our chat box are, but I am 50 years old, so I remember a lot of this. In 2011, Mir Hossein Mousavi and other Green Movement leaders were placed under house arrest for leading a series of protests called the Day of Rage. As far as we know, he's still there. The last time I heard of Mousavi, he was still under house arrest, which would have been 2 years ago. Recently, The Guardian reported that the US-Israeli bombing campaign badly damaged Mousavi's home last month. So, I guess he's still in there. In 2012, on Face the Nation on CBS, Netanyahu claimed that Iran is getting very, very close. Within a few weeks. Do you like that? Do you like that action? I bet you do. You like that, don't you? Yeah, you do. Yes, take it all. Take it all, bitch. Fucking take it.
What?
Getting very close. Within a few weeks of having a nuclear
what the
weapon.
fuck was that?
Oh, there's more. There's more as we go on. Yeah, you like that, don't you? Yeah, you do. That same year, he told the UN that Iran was a few months away from having enough enriched uranium for a nuclear bomb. Also that year, the Iranian government mounted Operation Ababil, a full-spectrum cyber attack on the websites of various US financial institutions like the New York Stock Exchange and Chase Bank. They had limited effect, and I think from everyone's point of view, it was really just a revenge for the cyber attack that was done to them.
Yeah.
And again, it was largely performative. In 2015, if you remember that year, Iran signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which we all know as the Iran nuclear deal, with the big noises of the Western world. They all signed it, England and all these people signed it. In exchange for the suspension of most sanctions, as you said, Iran agreed to heavy monitoring of all their nuclear research and to limit their efforts in some technical ways. There's a big long list of all the technical ways they released it. They limited it, and I'm not going into it because it's boring. Just some technical ways. In 2017, there were a new series of protests unrelated to the Green Movement, but against the economic policies of the government. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that the people had economic, political and social demands. So I guess if the president is saying it, then they're probably onto something. There were also, however, many counter-protests by pro-government people who were happy enough with what the Ayatollah was doing. In 2018, Netanyahu presented evidence of an Iranian atomic archive, right? Iran's secret.
He's such a fucking chode. I fucking can't.
Yes. Netanyahu presented evidence of an Iranian atomic archive on national television. Israeli agents had stolen 55,000 pages of documents and 183 CDs of material, which, in the view of Netanyahu, proved that Iran was, quote, storing massive amounts of equipment and material from Iran's secret weapons program. Now, this, of course, would be in violation of the Iran nuclear deal. The IAEA responded that there was nothing new in the documents and that there were quote, no credible indications of activities in Iran relevant to the development of a nuclear explosive device after 2009. Right? A few days after this presentation, Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal, which presumably was the intention, and officially reinstated all sanctions against Iran that had been lifted as a result of the nuclear deal. There are indications that the entire presentation was aimed at Trump in particular. Now, Seamus, what about that presentation and the previous image would lead you to believe that it was aimed at Trump in particular?
He's a fucking idiot.
There's a number of things just from that image alone and the previous image. First of all, it's big letters,
Okay.
right? And which that's the comedy
It's
reason, but it's
very
also true.
simple. It's
Yes,
very
it's very
simple for
simple.
him. Yeah.
It's very easy to understand. It's very
Hmm.
simple. There's big letters, and also it's in English. And
Yes. Yes.
Netanyahu would not go on national television, and obviously it was aimed at an English-speaking audience, and who in the
Yep.
English-speaking audience, right? So there's indications that the entire. Now I know we laughed at the fact that there's big letters, but I'm actually serious about that.
Yeah.
The big letters, I think, are indications that it was aimed at Trump. You know, in particular.
Yeah.
Sorry, there were more protests in 2019 calling for the overthrow of the Ayatollah and the restoration of democracy, something that hasn't been seen in Iran before or since 1952, which we discussed in our first episode, Operation Ajax. Military bases were attacked, statues of Khamenei and Khomeini were torn down. The government shut down the entire internet, which is still amazes me that any country can do that. The government shut down the entire internet and soldiers went out into the street and started shooting people. The driver of the riots was the price of oil, but it ballooned to include all the grievances the people had against their government. And this is a regular thing with Iranian protests. They start with something and they turn into everything the government's doing. Again, not Islam, just what their government is doing. The responses were brutal and 2,000 people were killed. As one Tehran merchant said, the 2009 protests show that the regime had lost the middle class. The protests in November show that they've lost the working class too. So now Iran is losing people all over the place. They are ripe for revolution. So now the feeling on the ground in Tehran is that they're losing the middle class, they've lost the working class around 2009, and this is 2019. So by 2019, there's revolution in the air in Iran, right? And there's kind of an almost class crossing class boundaries feeling on that. Sanctions on Iran were accelerated under Biden and during the second Trump presidency, where we are now. In 2020, Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian major general, which the Iranians took particularly badly. They responded by attacking US military bases in Iraq. And should it all give us pause that there are US military bases in Iraq? Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
In 2024, Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Damascus, in Syria. We will surely all remember that. Iran responded by sending missiles to the Israeli Air Force base at Nevatim, where the Iranians believed the attacks on their embassy originated. The following day, the Iranian representative to the UN said he regarded the matter concluded. Now, we have to kind of see that as, again, a largely performative counterattack. The Iranians are doing everything they can to de-escalate, to show restraint.
It's a practice that they do all the time. Them and Israel do that all the time. So.
They're trying to de-escalate and to be more intelligent and show restraint in their counterattacks. And even in the current round, this is what I said about Iran, what they were doing when they got attacked. The man on the left, the man on the right there is Khamenei, and the man on the left is a guy called Ismail Haniyeh. In July 2024, Israel killed Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, while he was in Tehran. That's a picture of him there in Tehran. The Iranians responded with more generalized strikes on Israel. Israel Heritage Minister Amihai Eliyahu, in typical Zionist fashion, said the killing, quote, makes the world a little better, and that it was the right way to cleanse the world from this filth. Well, that's not a way to. That's not the kind of language you want to use when you're in the middle of peace talks, is it?
Right.
In the middle of 2025, now we're getting super close to where we are, Israel bombed military and nuclear facilities in Iran in a surprise attack, assassinating prominent military leaders, nuclear scientists and politicians, civilians, and destroying air defenses. Iran retaliated with ballistic missiles and suicide drones aimed at generalized targets in Israel, but also 12 military, energy, and government sites. The United States responded by bombing Iranian nuclear sites. Iran retaliated by firing missiles at a US base in Qatar. At the end of June, Israel and Iran agreed to a ceasefire under US pressure. Now, when I say Iran nuclear sites, these are the sites that Iranians are working on for energy production reasons, right?
Right.
And the Israelis keep saying, oh no, it's bombs. In early 2026, Netanyahu convinced Trump to launch a full-scale bombing campaign against Iran. Apparently, he changed tack from claims about potential nuclear capability that we all know and love, and instead claimed that Iran had put together an assassin plot against Trump. And if Trump killed the Ayatollah Khamenei, the Iranian people would take to the streets shouting his name in gratitude.
Right.
Now, that's me being a bit poetic about it, but that's essentially what I think happened. On February 28th, in the middle of Ramadan, several targets in Iran were bombed by Israeli and American warplanes. The Ayatollah Khamenei was declared dead that night. Almost immediately, several American media reported that Netanyahu had talked Trump into bombing Iran, to the point where Trump was forced to publicly state that he made the decision all on his own, and the purpose of the attacks was regime change. Now, he's also listed 5 other reasons for the attacks, but
Yeah.
that was what he said that night. One of the earliest casualties of the war was a school which killed 168 people, including around 110 children in Iran. Tehran, if you remember that, yeah. No, it wasn't in Tehran, I'm sorry. But it was a school that killed about 110 children.
And we know that a lot of this is to appease Israel. It's been released. I mean, both Rubio and Hegseth have both said that and then had to walk it back. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems obvious.
yeah,
It seems it's so obvious that it seems perverse to argue against
Yeah.
it. Iran responded to this school crime and the death of their leader by hitting targets in Tel Aviv and Haifa, as well as targets across the GCC, meaning the Gulf states, such as Kuwait International Airport, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and Erbil International Airport in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. They also hit Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Ali Al Salam Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, all US air bases, which we discussed before in I forget which one of our episodes, but we remember we did the top 10 in it must have been Ajax, the top 10 US air bases around Iran. And we discussed that. And we also discussed this, which was bombed by Iran as well in response. The US Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. We discussed that, didn't we?
think so.
I think so. Trump clearly believed that it would be a 2-week job at most and had no idea what to do when the Iranians mounted a restrained and intelligent series of counterattacks, including closing the Strait of Hormuz. Now we have a map. There's Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman. There's Iraq and their tiny little coastline. Tehran there is in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. And the ring there is, if you didn't know, if you didn't see it 27 times a day for the last 2 months, that is the Strait of Hormuz. You can see the problem they'd have getting the tankers out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Trump started to panic. This panic manifested itself publicly when he posted on his social media, "Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards." Trump actually said that on his social media. I read it myself and I still found it hard to believe. I found it hard to believe. Like, if you wanted to write a joke, how would you make it funnier than that?
He's off his fucking tits. I mean, he's also applesauce, let's be honest. So.
Yeah. In April, which for us right now is last month, peace talks in Islamabad, which is in Pakistan, broke down with no agreement, and the following day Trump ordered a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which is already closed by Iran, so it's a blockade of a different blockade. Trump has extended the week truce indefinitely, and this is where we are now. Despite declaring victory several times, there appears to be no good off-ramp for the Americans here. Oil prices are through the roof, and in a few weeks, the price of everything in the West that either works on oil or is delivered by anything powered by oil will also go up. Trump is recording record low approval ratings, and many of his previous biggest supporters are speaking against him now for engaging in one of the pointless and costly forever wars he campaigned against. Meanwhile, in Iran, everybody is rowing in behind the government, meaning now the country looks like it's being run not by the Ayatollah anymore, but by the IRGC. Everybody is now supporting them. All the possibilities of having a revolution are now gone, because all the people who had this cross-class, almost a coalition of people who would have been happy to have a revolution in Iran because of the Israeli-inspired invasion, now they're all supporting Iran, as you would.
Yeah.
It all makes total sense. It's completely predictable, and that's the situation we're in now. And that is my Iran thing, and I'm hoping I don't have to do another one.
Fingers crossed.
I don't know what the off ramp for America is. It's not. There's no way out of this where they can win. There's lots of ways out of this where Iran can win, right? Yeah. There's no way out of this where America can win, because what are they going to do? They'll either back down or escalate.
It's fucking stupid. It's dumber than an Iraq war. So,
yeah,
by far.
Yeah, it has no benefit at all to America.
Nope. No. It's a bunch of bullshit. So, release the files. Anyways,
do you have any comments or do you have any questions or comments or anything about Epstein, that episode?
Epstein episode? Yeah. We'll do an Epstein episode.
Okay.
You know. You can't sit there for how many years now and saying that a country has a right to defend itself, and then we are going in and doing a first strike upon them, and then pull the whole it was a preventive strike. Fuck off.
Well, from Iran's point of view, if you're an Iranian person, what happened is the U.S. and Israel bombed your country for no reason at all.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So it's hard not to see their point of view.
Well, because that's how we say it. And then it doesn't fucking help whenever you start doing in Israel and bombing women and children, doing double
Yeah.
taps,
Yeah.
killing not just civilians, but also killing rescue workers,
Yeah.
taking out bridges, taking out infrastructure that is war crimes. I mean,
Do you know what
it's
that? Do you know what
just
the
so
double tap
fucking
is?
gross. Yeah,
Does everybody
they
know what a
wait
double
for
tap is?
they wait for
They kill a guy.
rescue workers to come,
Yeah.
or other people for aid, and then they strike again so they can kill them as well.
Yes.
And that's
They
a
kill.
practice that Israel's been doing in
Yeah.
Gaza and Palestine for
Yes.
decades.
It's called a double tap. They will kill
Yep.
a guy and wait for someone to show up, and ideally his relations, and kill all those people as well. That's
Yep.
a double tap.
Yep.
But
And now we're doing it. So, hey.
yay! Is there anything been going on this week though? What's new, Pussycat? Okay, this is what's new. This is the part of the show. This is a show, an educational presentation. This is the part of the show where Seamus and I put the FBI and the CIA as the letters into Google, hit the news tab, and see what interesting and wonderful things happened this week. Seamus, did you hear any FBI stories this week that you want to talk to us about?
Not really, but I will anyways. So Comey, the former director of the FBI, has been charged
I
over
heard
a
that.
Instagram post where he put 8647. So of
Yeah.
course it's a clear attack on Trump.
Yes.
So yeah, whatever.
But he said Trump is claiming it's a death threat, but it's not. It's just get rid of him, right?
No, yeah, but he's a fucking idiot. So this is just all more bullshit.
Yeah.
FBI redirected a quarter of its staff to target immigration under Trump's deportation push. Over 9,000 FBI personnel were assigned to immigration after Trump returned to office. So
Okay.
that's a fucking waste of time.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. And then our next bit, I can't believe we get to talk about him, but we're going to talk about him. Cash! Cash! I honestly thought he'd be fired by now, but so
Yeah.
far.
Yes, he
Anyways,
did.
the FBI turned a custody dispute into a cheap anti-trans fodder.
Oh,
This is all
fuck me.
because, they took allegations of a kidnapping case involving a child away from local law enforcement and sent a plane to retrieve the child from Cuba because they believed that the child was going there for sex reassignment surgery or gender affirming care. So, which there's zero evidence of it. It's just it's a giant stretch. And of course, Cash tweeted about it and jerked himself off. And
I have an idea. Why don't we just shut the fuck up about trans people?
there's an idea. Or if you do talk about them, talk about how awesome they are and love them because they're wonderful people.
But
So-
or just sure that that true, but also just say nothing at all about them is also acceptable. Because I made a list recently of all the trans people who ever fucked me over or insulted me or were mean to me in any way, and let me just read off the list, and we're done. Okay, so here's the CIA bits. This is one you gave me, Seamus.
Okay.
The headline is on The Guardian, 2 U.S. officials who died after Mexico drug raid reported to be CIA agents. Mexico has launched an investigation into a possible breach of its constitution, as it was reported that 2 embassy officials who died in a car accident while returning from a raid on a drugs lab with local officials in the border state of Chihuahua were CIA operatives. So that's a whole basket of snakes there that I'm not
Yeah.
going to continue on, but you can read it if you want. It's interesting. Another one is on Spy Talk. It says, is the CIA still hiding embarrassing details of its Iraq WMD debacle? The answer is yes.
Yes.
And this is a whole big ass thing. This guy Watson, he sued the CIA last December so he can publish his book, his 850-page narrative about the disaster, assuming he can find a publisher. The CIA is trying to get the lawsuit tossed out until determine if any of the manuscript contains classified information. So that's a bit of a Gary Webb situation.
Yeah.
Another one from The Guardian is, we wasted a lot of lives. CIA spy master's caution over past Iran intervention resurfaces from beyond the grave. And this is about a guy called Peter Sickle, who ran the Berlin office of the CIA, and they called him the Jewish James Bond. He's a very interesting character. I'm just going to skip ahead to the here. If we had not got rid of Mossadegh, Iran today would be a good member of the family of nations, a socialist democratic country, said this guy. Right? And I think you and me would agree with that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
We discussed that whole Mossadegh thing in Operation Ajax, the first episode in this series about Iran. This is the last episode because it ends yesterday. And here's a whimsical one from irishnews.com. And it says, you talk about the CIA, Trump, and Iran. They have nothing compared to GAA managers. GAA is our national sport. And that's just a little jokey one. That's for the Irish people listening. And that is mine. And I guess that's the end of our show, is it?
Yeah. So it'd either be a jib jab or an FBI next. So
cool. We all look forward to that.
Yep. It might possibly be a super dark one, but we'll see.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll try to find a fun one too. So
is anything it's more dark than killing kids in Iranian jails?
We'll see you everybody. 2 weeks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.